So thanks for joining me today. My name is William Reisacker, and today we're going to be talking about preparing five-fold dilutions. So why do we prepare five-fold dilutions? Well, one of the purposes is for intradermal testing. We get concentrated extract from the manufacturer, but we don't use concentrated extract for intradermal testing. We have to dilute it down. And now we could do a single intradermal test. We can use multiple dilutions of the same allergen in what we call intradermal dilutional testing. And we can also use it combined with prick testing for what's called modified quantitative testing. We also use these dilutions when we're preparing the subcutaneous immunotherapy vial. Now, the 1 to 5 dilution schedule was first described by Dr. Rinkel in 1940. He was a general allergist, and he introduced this scheme. Now, titration also allows us to quantify the level of sensitivity to an allergen, which is helpful when we're deciding how to formulate the treatment vial. What we really want to do is to provide immunotherapy that can begin at the highest dose possible, which is also safe. Now, there are some other dilutional schemes that are used. The 1 to 10 dilution is used by the general allergists. 1 to 5 is generally used by ENT allergists. And 1 to 3 is used by the government when they're creating a standardization for some of the extracts. So this is how the five-fold dilutions actually look. The concentrated extract comes to us from the manufacturer at a 1 to 20 weight to volume. And then as we make five-fold dilutions, it gets more dilute. So 1 to 100, then 1 to 500, and so on and so forth. Of note here that when you refer to the certain dilution, a number 1 or a number 2, the higher the number, the more dilute the extract becomes, because we're describing how many times it's been diluted by a factor of 5. So that can be a little confusing, but remember, the higher the number on the dilution, that means the more dilute it is. Okay, so what is the equipment we're going to need in order to make these 1 to 5 dilutions? Well, you can see, first of all, is the stock solution of extract at a 1 to 20 weight to volume. And when we're saying weight to volume, what we mean is 1 gram of dried antigen protein in 20 mLs. And this is what we refer to as the concentrate. And you can see on the picture below, this is what the concentrated allergens look like when they come to us from the manufacturer. Now, just because there's 1 gram of dried antigen, it doesn't mean that entire gram is the active protein in the allergen. There can be other proteins that are mixed in, but there's an estimate of how much of the actual antigen is in that solution. And also, knowing that it's 1 to 20 does not really give you information about the potency, the biologic activity. But again, there is a range that is known. Some of the extracts come in a standardized format like dust mite and cat, while the others come in this 1 to 20 weight to volume estimated solution, essentially. So these dilutions are used on both our testing and our treatment boards, which we need for this. We need our mixing syringes, we need empty vials, labels, diluent, which we'll go over in a slide coming up, and we need refrigeration. So the boards should be sturdy. You can buy these from the allergy supply houses, and these are generally made of acrylic. The wells are 6 across to handle the 6 dilutions that we use, and then 10 rows, essentially, when we're doing dilutional testing. And these fit very well into the refrigerator shelves. They tend to stack very well in addition. The numbers are started with numbering with number 6 on the left. So the most dilute dilution of the allergen is on the left side of the row, and then as you move towards the right, the dilutions are going to get more and more concentrated. Although concentrated extract is never put on the treatment or the testing board. So this is how it looks with number 6 on the left, and then as you move to the right, it goes down number 5, 4, 3, 2, and then 1. The concentrated extract solutions come in bottles that don't even fit on the board, so that's a sort of a safety measure to ensure that you're not putting concentrated extract on the board, because as mentioned before, we do not do injections, intradermal injections, or subcutaneous injections with concentrated extract. So these are the syringes that you're going to be using, and there's 3 different types. There's a mixing syringe, which you use when you're making your 5-fold dilutions. This is very easy to bring the plunger up and down, so this kind of saves your thumb from getting too fatigued if you're doing many dilutions. And then the testing syringe, which has a short bevel. This is good for doing intradermal testing. And then the treatment syringe, which also holds up to 1 ml. This has a long bevel, and this is more advantageous when you're doing subcutaneous injections. Now, diluent. What can we use for diluent? You can use just regular, normal saline. It's not a great preservative, and it also does not really extend the shelf life very far. Another option, which actually has been gaining popularity recently, and some recent articles about this, is human serum albumin. It does have some problems with walling, meaning some of the proteins can get stuck to the side of the vial instead of being in the solution. There's also some concern over the spread of HIV and hepatitis B, and it goes through some testing measures to decrease that risk. There's also buffered saline solution. So this is a very commonly used diluent. This has phenol, which is also bacteriostatic, and then some sodium bicarbonate to help balance the pH. And then glycerin. That can also be used as a diluent, but it's also used as a preservative. This comes in a 50% stock solution, which is actually very similar to our concentrate, which also comes diluted in a 50% stock solution. So the 50% glycerin has a shelf life of 3 years, as does our concentrated extracts. Once you dilute it, make a number 1 dilution, and then you have 10% glycerin, that shelf life drops to 3 months. And then as you dilute it further, numbers 2 through 6 and even beyond, you'll get a shelf life of about 6 weeks. So again, as stated, the concentrate also comes in 50% glycerin, and that information will become important later on. This shelf life can be extended by refrigeration. So let's look now at the refrigerators that we can use. So here are the refrigerators. It's good to have a large refrigerator to handle some of your storage for the concentrated extracts, and then having a couple of refrigerators in the immediate vicinity of your testing is also helpful. Here on the left, we see an under-the-counter refrigerator, which has some of the storage for the patient's immunotherapy vials, and you'll see those acrylic boards, as I showed you before. They can stack up and they can hold a lot of dilutions of your allergen. Then it's also good to have sort of a workhorse refrigerator. That's a small one you can see on the right, which has the testing boards, the multi-testers that you're constantly using, because you don't want to be bending over underneath the counter. Eventually, that's going to send your allergy nurse into workman's compensation territory for her back or his back. So a workhorse refrigerator that's right on top that they don't have to bend over for is very helpful to get. So mixing the board. Preparation is, of course, very critical. Attention to detail is important. You want to label the vials before mixing, and that includes what the antigen is. You see on the right, this is cat. You want to indicate the dilution number. So here it's a number 4 dilution. And then the expiration date based on what dilution it is, what number dilution it is, from the date that you're actually mixing it. You want to avoid distractions, and 1 needle is used per row, per antigen. And I'm going to show you how that goes in just a couple of slides. So you never want to put a concentrate vial on the board. As mentioned, it will not even fit on the board, and this is a safety measure. You also want to make the dilutions based on how much you're going to need. Now, there's different ways to make a 1-to-5 dilution. You could take 1 ml of concentrate and add that to 4 mLs of diluent. That'll make a 1-to-5. You can also take 0.5 and add that to 2 mLs of diluent, or 0.25 and add that to 1 ml of diluent. It really depends. When you're first starting out and maybe you don't have a whole lot of patients that you're testing, it's good to make smaller amounts. And then as your practice becomes a little bit busier and you have more patients, then you need to keep more in stock, and you can use 1 ml added to 4 mLs. So now let's look at the nuts and bolts of actually preparing the serial dilutions. Here on this slide, I've already broken the rule that I've mentioned, which is that we start off with the most concentrated one is actually on the right side. Here, the most concentrated one is on the left. But if you kind of reverse that in your minds, and we'll see that on the next slide how that actually goes. So you start off with the concentrate, and then what you do is you take, in this example, 1 ml, and then you would mix that with 4 mLs of a diluent, and that would make your number 1. Then you take the 1 ml from the number 1, and you mix that with the vial next door, and that becomes the number 2 vial. So you can see the number 2 is 5 times more dilute than the number 1, which is 5 times more dilute than the concentrate. And you repeat that process of taking 1 ml from the number 2 and then adding that to 4 mLs of diluent to make the number 3, and so on and so forth to make all the dilutions that you want. So here we see this actually going on with a real individual, my allergy nurse Maria. So first thing that she does is invert the vial. So this is a concentrated solution that we received, that we bought from the manufacturer. And first thing is to add the amount of air into the vial corresponding to the amount of liquid that you're going to be taking out. So when you're taking a solution out of the vial, it needs to be inverted. So in this case, we're taking out 1 ml of concentrated extract. Then she takes the 1 ml of concentrated extract and injects it into the number 1 vial, which contains 4 mLs of our diluent, which in this case is phenylated saline. Then once that's injected, she inverts the number 1 vial and moves the plunger up and down slowly about 3 or 4 times just to mix the number 1 solution. And this is done slowly. You don't want to create any bubbles. Then once you've done that, you withdraw 1 ml of the number 1 solution, and that vial is placed down. And then on the right-hand side, that 1 ml is injected into the 4 mLs of phenylated saline in the number 2 to create the number 2 solution. And then that vial is inverted and mixed 3 or 4 times, and another 1 ml is pulled out. And that process continues all the way down the line until you've made 6 5-fold dilutions of that particular allergen. So I hope you've enjoyed this video presentation on making 5-fold dilutions, and look out for the next video, which is about finding the endpoint.